Welcome to the Skull King Football Podcast, presented by Fox DFS Firelines. Now, here are your hosts, Justin and Ryan Skullrood.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrood, and I've got my brother Justin with me. And we are going to go over the Monday Night Football game. We're going to hit up a little bit of today's headlines, go over some waiver wire madness, and then get out of this garbage because a lot of us had a really crappy week in week 2. Would you agree, Justin?
Yeah, and Monday night was the definition of garbage night. My garbage normally comes on Friday mornings, but definitely this week's garbage showed up on Monday night.
Mine shows up on Monday mornings, but so it was just a garbage day for me here on Monday. As many of you guys know, we are Seahawks fans. We were born and raised in Seattle. We've been cheering for blue and green since.
We are lifelongers. We're not the.
We didn't start rooting for the Seahawks in 2005 and 2006.
Yeah. Or
in 2014.
Yeah. We can name players that did not wear the current color scheme. Black and the silver and kind of that light bluish, almost like the Detroit Lions blue and silver with a slight green.
Yeah, so
with this slightly less pissed Seahawk.
Yeah, see, we actually went to games and actually saw, Dave Craig.
Yeah, Kingdome before it blew up.
I missed that place. Anyways, we're off topic, but that's something nice to think about considering how crappy the Seahawks are right now. We're kind of hearkening back to those days, to be completely honest. So let's just kind of dig into it a little bit. The Seahawks are terrible. The
Bears are much better.
Besides that, well, okay, let's rephrase that. The Bears' offense isn't that much better.
Yes.
And while Jason Witten tried to kind of bolster up Mitch Trubisky tonight, he really is still not all that great.
No.
The Bears swung and missed when they passed up on Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson for Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah. I am not excited. I saw an article earlier today about how the Monday Night Football announcing broadcast is going to be a steaming pile for the rest of the year. And it kind of was. I mean, as much as Jason Witten was a great football player, he's not – he needs a little bit more to get in the booth. I think Tony Romo, great. Witten needs some help. I would not even pick him up on the waiver wire as a fantasy announcer at this point.
So let's actually, the actual ups and downs of the game. Tyler Lockett had a semi-decent game in PPR. That's kind of expected. He's a boomer bust wide receiver 3 in PPR. Russell Wilson was not great, especially if you're scoring subtracts points for sacks and subtracts points for pick sixes. It's not just the interception, but also a pick six. I had a guy in my league that because of the sacks, which I think is like -1 point for every time he gets sacked. So there's -6 there. He had 2 fumbles and lost 2 fumbles. So there's another, let's see, if you lose a fumble, it's 1 point. If you fumble it, it's -1. You lose the fumble, it's -2 more. So there's another 6 points there. And then the pick 6 was another -3 or 4 points. He lost by 3 points.
I was secretly hoping for Russell Wilson to get a tackle and then Jordan Howard to get a touchdown from like the 1 yard line, but that didn't happen.
So really the main issue with the offense is the offensive line. I mean, people can say that Russell Wilson is holding on the ball too long. Part of the problem there is he doesn't have the weapons outside. Doug Baldwin's not there. He really only has is a weapon would be Tyler Lockett.
Disley is a weapon.
But I mean he's only getting like 3 catches a game, only being targeted 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, Russell Wilson just has to he is the player, so he feels like he has to do everything. So he doesn't want to get rid of the ball after 2 seconds like he should, which is the time limit that he had when he threw the touchdown to Lockett. was 1-2 throw, and Lockett got a touchdown.
It was the same with Disley at the end of the game. So, it doesn't help that the offensive line is so bad. I was hoping for some improvement. I was trying to be optimistic, but they're terrible. I mean, we're looking at a complete offensive line rebuild needs to happen. I mean, I'm semi-okay to tank the season just so we can get – well, no, because then they keep trading down and not pick up offensive linemen until the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds.
Yeah.
Anyways, as far as the Bears go, Allen Robinson – what did Allen Robinson finish with tonight? Do you have that?
10 catches, 83 yards, no touchdowns, 14 targets. They peppered him all night. Now, Shaquem Griffin got 2 interceptions in this game because of that type of peppering. And it's just, to me, it didn't make any sense. With all the other weapons you have, with a Trey Burton or running the ball even. Jordan Howard did have 14 rushes, but it felt like he had 5 watching this game because he really got a lot of those rushes in the second half when they had a much larger lead. This offense seems to be confused. I mean, in the preseason, there was a lot of work to Trey Burton. A lot of people, including myself, believed in Trey Burton and being a sleeper to be a top 5 tight end this year. But this offense is anemic, kind of confusing because the identity of what they had in the preseason, now granted we shouldn't put too much into the preseason, but the identity that they had from Nagy was that they would use the tight ends and they're being a little bit more pass heavy on the perimeter than I think that than a lot of people thought that they would. Now, Allen Robinson, solid player, but still I think they're being a little bit more pass heavy than most would have thought.
Well, I think that part of that was the offense or the defense of the Seahawks actually was plugging up the run a bit. At one point, where they say it looked like Jordan Howard was averaging 1.9 yards per carry. So I mean,
he finished with 2.5, so it didn't get much better.
Well, he had a couple of longer runs towards the end of the game, but anyways, so Jordan Howard will get his points. Tariq Cohen will get his points. But really, I'm not seeing a whole lot else other than own the Chicago Bears defense because as Greg, our fellow compatriot here at Skull King, who grew up a Chicago Bears fan, says this is the best Bears defense he has seen since the mid-'80s. So
yeah, and I would agree. Mac right now is causing a bunch of trouble. They're moving him around a lot. Trevathan's getting a little bit more access to the quarterback on his blitzes. It's just right now it's a mess. But the first 2 weeks, who knows? Seattle, I'm not that impressed with all the sacks that they got against Seattle. Seattle's offense has been known to be weak for the last 2 years. So, and we also couple of weeks against maybe a Minnesota or against some of the better offensive lines that they'll face the rest of the season, then I'll be a little bit more impressed.
All right. So now that we're done talking about that garbage.
Steamy garbage Monday nights.
All right, let's go ahead and get into today's headlines.
Today's headlines.
All right, so we'll start it off. Giants center John Halapio suffered a season-ending broken ankle week 2 against the Cowboys. So what that means is even though the Giants' offensive line was god-awful, it's about to get worse.
Yes, I talked about this in the preseason as why I was a little more hesitant than most on Saquon Barkley and why I'm still somewhat hesitant on an Evan Ingram, even though Ingram had a great week, is that this has been a historically bad offense in the running game. And Ezekiel Elliott, as a lot of people thought Saquon Barkley is the next Ezekiel Elliott, the next Alvin Kamara. But the problem is Ezekiel Elliott came into the best offensive line in the league. Saquon's coming into a bottom 5 offensive line in the league, and it just got worse with an offensive center that's now gone. So it's early. Hopefully they can get some quality stuff there. But if they begin to lose or someone else gets banged up, this is going to be a real problem.
Yeah, pretty much. Moving on, Aaron Jones is eligible to return from his 2-game suspension this week. If he's available on waiver wires, this would be a good time to pick him up. Or actually, honestly, you should have picked him up last week.
Yes.
To give yourself a little bit of a head start. If he's still there and you have waiver priority, he would definitely be a guy to look at. From what I was able to see last year, he was the more productive running back.
When he was healthy.
So that's definitely want to keep an eye on that, see if Aaron Jones is out there on your waiver wire. So, here we go. The Browns are signing kicker Greg Joseph. Was that the actual guy that got signed, Justin?
Yes. After today's workout, formerly of the Dolphins, you had mentioned a stat. He hasn't kicked in the NFL, and his kicking percentage was what?
Like 65% in college, and yeah, he's only the Cleveland Browns. So, well, the Vikings expected to sign Dan Bailey. Looks like he is ready to go. Dan Bailey is back. I heard that he actually turned down like 3 or 4 different offers from other teams before finally signing with them.
Yeah, I guarantee you the Browns tried to call him first, and he's like, nah. I'm good.
So Dan Bailey's I think Dan Bailey is one of the more accurate kickers in the league. I think that he is, unless it's a Minnesota thing. Unless there's just something with Minnesota that they're just cursed.
Something bad in the air, or apparently Vikings don't like the sissiness of kickers.
Whatever.
Curse.
Bills running back LaShawn McCoy has cracked rib cartilage, leaving him questionable for Sunday's game at Minnesota against the Vikings, per source. McCoy should not miss more than 1 game, if that. McCoy has played with this injury before, is not expected to sideline him very long. At this point, I'm not playing him anyways. I mean, the Bills are so awful. Awful.
And this is one of those things, Ivory and Marcus Murphy ahead of Ivory, but neither one of those should be even flexible, even in like a 14-team league, because the Bills are so awful. McCoy is really the only player. With him out, find other options.
Yep. All right, speaking Monday, Bucs head coach Dirk Koetter declined to commit to Jameis Winston as the team's starting quarterback when he comes off suspension in Week 4. Why would he even want to bring in Jameis Winston when you have Ryan Fitzmagic throwing the ball all over the place, having great chemistry with his receivers, and they're winning games? You do not screw with that kind of chemistry.
Not just winning games against quality defenses.
Yeah.
Well, last year's quality defenses. We'll get that. We'll get into that when we get to the waiver wires. But Fitzpatrick should be owned in every league at this point. Jameis Winston, who?
Yeah, basically. What else was I seeing? I was gonna mention something about the Dirk Koetter, something about Jameis Winston and Fitz. Oh, side note: Fitzmagic is actually being trademarked.
Yeah, by Minka Fitzpatrick.
Because he's been called that since like high school or something.
Yeah, apparently he wants to try and steal Fitzpatrick's money. I mean, the man is trying to play for his life and is playing out of his mind. I honestly think that's part of it, is that Fitzpatrick has had nothing to lose. Of course he's going to go out there and just sling it all over the place because, if he throws a couple interceptions, he's going to do exactly what he was going to do in Week 4 anyway and lose his job. Now he's tearing it up and has potentially earned himself, I would say not potentially, has earned himself the starting spot for at least the next 4 weeks after Winston comes back.
Yep. All right, moving on. Ravens coach John Harbaugh has confirmed that running back Kenneth Dixon, with his knee on injured reserve, will be a candidate to return in 8 weeks. I'm not holding my breath on this one.
Still sit on waivers.
This is a guy. Yeah, this is a guy that's had some knee issues anyways beforehand. That was dealing with him last year. So yeah. Speaking Monday, Packers head coach Mike McCarthy said that Aaron Rodgers' knee was sore, but that he escaped without further damage in Sunday's tie, other than the fact that they tied. Keep Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's definitely the guy to go with. Let me see. We'll get to that at the end. Coach Dan Quinn said Monday the Falcons are not sure about Devonta Freeman's knee return timeline. Keep firing up Coleman.
And those of you who drafted him are going to be very frustrated over the next couple of weeks because this could linger 2-3 weeks. High draft stock. This is going to be annoying. It'd be better if he was fully out, injured reserve, and those kinds of things. But this is going to be something that may annoy you for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I was high on Devonta Freeman, but this, he's had some injury issues. We'll see what Coleman can do with the role himself. Cardinals coach, here's some quote unquote good news for all you David Johnson drafters like me. Cardinals coach Steve Wilks promised Monday that David Johnson will run more routes in the slot going forward. No, just hand him the freaking ball.
They handed him the ball. The problem is they're getting down. Their defense is so bad. They're getting down early fast that they have to throw. So if you could get a quarterback that gets more than 90 yards on 17 completions, then maybe. But I think this is more a default of tough first two games. Washington is a solid defense, and the Rams are the best defense in the league, period, at this point. Not even close.
Well, and then on top of that, you've got Sam Bradford, who I think is done, let's be honest.
I think he was done last year. He had one game I'll call it the Adrian Peterson effect. He's done, but he had 9 months to rest. So yes, he's going to be fresh. Game 2, what happens? Adrian Peterson ran for 9 yards? 9 yards or something like that. I'd have to double check, but it wasn't good. So this is one of those things that if they lose again, like we said previous episode, it's Josh Rosen time.
Go Josh Rosen, because if you're in there, that means that Larry Fitzgerald will actually get some passes and get some catches, and David Johnson will be more productive. Period. It's going to happen. All right.
Sorry, Peterson had 20 yards. 20 yards.
Sorry. Okay. So trade now agreed to officially. The Patriots are sending Cleveland a 5th-round pick. And if Josh Gordon isn't active for 10 games, the Patriots will get back a late-round pick, probably a 6th or 7th, from the Browns. So it's official. Josh Gordon is a Patriot.
One thing I'll say randomly, really quickly, I think Josh Gordon needs to check his tires because Corey Coleman's probably slashing him. Because Corey Coleman lost his position in Cleveland because Josh Gordon came back. He gets signed by New England and gets cut for Gordon to come back. So Josh Gordon, check your tires. Don't walk out into the parking lot alone. Corey Coleman may be coming for you.
Make sure you have personal security around all your stuff because Corey Coleman, I'm sure, is going to start lacing your drinks with something to fail another drug test. I mean, that's something to watch for. Oh, gosh. All right.
Does that mean that the Patriots should have been the Hard Knocks team this year?
Maybe.
Or maybe they'll be Hard Knocks next year?
Maybe. Okay, so let's seriously actually dig into this. Is Josh Gordon going to be relevant this season? Yes or no?
Can I get a definition of relevant? Flexible, bench worthy? Like what is the parameters of relevant? Flexible.
I'll put it right in the middle.
I'm going to say no. Because if someone were to offer him to me in a trade, I would say no. A tremendous talent. Brady now has weapons. Dorsett has proven value. Hogan didn't do anything for the first half, but then 2 touchdowns late. Edelman's coming back. Gronk. I know Fong, who's a staff writer here, wants him to be Randy Moss 2.0. I just don't see that happening in this first year. He's going to have to learn the offense. He's going to have to prove himself from a discipline standpoint. If he's relevant, it's not until week 6 and later. And at that point, it's only half of the regular season. I would look elsewhere.
You're going into the playoffs at that point. Can he get enough of the offense down to be relevant for the playoffs?
Okay, you tell me, and then I'm going to go look at the playoff schedule for New England.
From what I've seen, because I actually have their defense on one of my teams, it's I believe they're actually a pretty good. They pull up my team.
They're going to have the Dolphins in week 13, Steelers week 14, Bills week 15, Jets week 16. So I would say
check that. The Jets are 17. So it's Minnesota.
That's
Minnesota
what
13. Minnesota week 13, Miami week 14. So for the playoffs, Miami, then Pittsburgh, then Buffalo. Yeah, he very well could be very fantasy relevant at that
Yes, then I'm going to change my opinion because of the playoff schedule. He's going to have enough time to get under his belt. You're going to have to bite the bullet and keep him on your bench until he pops, because I would rather, because I am a risk-averse person, I would rather have him sit on my bench and score 30 points than for me to put him in my roster and score 0. So I would wait for him to pop and then play him. Once again, probably not until week 7 or 8. But a playoff run, that's some pretty good teams, because the Steelers can't stop anybody. The Bills are atrocious. And the Dolphins, that's the wild card, because they always play well against the Patriots at home in Miami.
All right. The Redskins are signing wide receiver Rashad Perriman. That's not fantasy relevant because he's horrible. I'm sorry. We're trying not to be that guy.
But there's a reason why he got released.
He's been released. He can't stay healthy. It's just he has not been very successful in his career. So this is what fantasy owners absolutely love to hear. Not. Coach Vance Joseph said that the Broncos will continue using a hot hand approach in the backfield, and Justin and all Freeman owners are shaking their heads in disgust.
Freeman can't be the hot hand if you don't give him the ball. I believe he is the superior running back. I said this at the beginning of the season. Yes, Lindsey is doing a terrific job right now. It's just one of those bitter kinds of things. I think this is one of those things. I'm not saying, let me preface this by saying, I'm not saying that Royce Freeman is the next Kamara. But this is one of those things like we talked about last year. The talent is there and the availability is there later in the season. Give it time. Cream always rises to the top. I think Royce Freeman will be the guy. Just right now, Lindsey's playing out of his mind. Quality running back. Kind of a hometown guy because he played college in Colorado. But I still believe that Royce Freeman is capable. Scored a touchdown. Got you some points if you played him. But right now, he's sitting on my bench, and I don't like having my 4th pick sit on my bench.
Yeah, I hear you there. All right. Oh, good grief. The Redskins aren't done adding wide receivers. They signed Michael Floyd, so another useless pickup for them.
Go for it.
Jarvis Landry was limited in Monday's practice with the knee injury. I know a lot of guys, wondering why are they practicing on Monday? Well, you got to remember that the Browns and the Jets have the Thursday night football game this week. That should be a real barn burner. You know what? The Browns have a shot with how good their defense is at actually winning a game.
It's the Jets.
Actually, they've had a chance at winning 2 games already this year, and their kicker's blown it for them.
Had they had a field goal kicker, they would be 2-0.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That is it for today's headlines. Why don't we go ahead now, and we will move into our waiver wire madness.
Waiver Wire Madness.
So, Justin, why don't we go ahead and I know that we'll have you lead this section. I'll kind of fill in here and there with some of my thoughts. I've got a list of some of my own players as well. But why don't you go ahead and start off with the quarterbacks?
Starting off, quarterback, number one, we alluded to this earlier. He's been a top 5 performer for the last 2 weeks. Number 1 performer in week 1. Ryan Fitzpatrick is still only currently owned in 31.4% of ESPN leagues. At this point, there should be no doubters in Fitzmagic. He's having fun. He's playing loose and free, carefree because he had nothing to lose. Case in point is the press conference where he comes out and just has some fun. He's torched 2 quality defenses in the Saints and the Eagles. Now, once again, it's early. I still think the Eagles and the Saints are quality defenses, but those defenses looked like junior hires playing against the Buccaneers so far. Once again, both the Eagles and the Saints were playoff teams last year. He travels to Pittsburgh this week to face a team that just gave up 300 yards and 6 touchdowns to Mahomes. Ryan Fitzpatrick should be owned in every league at this point.
Quick thing to add into that. Yeah. How many? Okay. What was the percentage in Yahoo or in ESPN leagues?
31.4%.
In Yahoo, he is only owned in 23%. So he is widely available. Go get him.
In the percentages defense, I was leery of grabbing Fitzpatrick last week. I normally don't carry 2 quarterbacks anyway, and I was going to keep Rivers, who's kind of my guy this year. Got him a couple of teams, have a couple other quarterbacks, but I was sticking to my guns. After week 1, I was not going to freak out and grab a quarterback. Now I'm entertained.
Same here. Real quick, I don't know. I can't find the actual tweet. Someone actually put this out there that all time, Ryan Fitzpatrick has more fantasy points for a quarterback for the first 2 games of a season than anyone all time. Ryan Fitzpatrick in 2018 is number 1. Pat Mahomes in 2018 is number 2. And number 3 is the hot start that Peyton Manning had in 2013 when Denver Broncos set all those records.
Yeah.
That tells you just how hot he is right now. So,
yeah. And Mahomes is obviously grabbed. A bunch of people grabbed him in their drafts. Fitzpatrick should be owned. If you're in a deeper league, like a 14-team league, he should be owned regardless. If you had a Mariota thinking that was going to turn around, talked about that last week, that would be a situation where you should have grabbed Fitzpatrick last week. If you didn't, you need to grab him now.
All right. Anyone else you got in the quarterbacks?
I've got Case Keenum more or less as a if you need one kind of a thing. The obvious go-to is Ryan Fitzpatrick. Once again, we believe in having one quarterback and then streaming on a bye, something along those lines. But my other one is Case Keenum, currently owned in 25.9% of leagues. I don't like the turnovers, obviously. Keenum struggled this last week, but he's got great matchups the next 2 weeks. They'll be against the Ravens, who I think are not, in the words of the coach from the Arizona Cardinals, they are who we thought they were. That is not the case with the Ravens. They are not who we thought they were at the beginning of the season. They got torched by Cincinnati, had a bad half. I think they can be exploitable in the passing game. Keenum's got some great weapons. The following week, they go to Kansas City, who's scoring at will because they need to, because their defense can't stop anybody. We liked Keenum at the beginning of the season. Weapons, once again, in Thomas and Sanders. He's getting help in the running game with the relatively unknown Lindsey coming in and playing. Keenum's an option if you need, if you're in a 2-quarterback league or you're in a deeper league and you want to feel comfortable in having a quarterback, great. This would be the option. But clearly Fitzpatrick is your go-to.
Yep, have to agree with you there. So, all right, let's move on to you want wide receivers or running backs next?
We'll go running backs.
All right.
My lead one here, and let me double check what I've got here. Yeah, number one on this list would be Giovanni Bernard, and that's because Mixon's going to be out 1 to 4 weeks because his knee just got scoped. Now, Mixon has the opportunity to only miss 1 week because he already had the surgery on Friday. They don't play until the Monday night game, I think, this next week. Let me double check that. Or no, they play the Monday night the week that he comes back. Excuse me. So he's got kind of a 2-week resting time while only missing 1 week. I think he could be back. It depends on how the surgery, how he recovers, how that is handled, and those kinds of things. But Giovanni Bernard is a solid player. Solid player in PPR formats, a little less so in standard formats. There's not as much of a drop, or there's not much of a drop, I should say, in Mixon to Giovanni Bernard. Gio has always been kind of that PPR, kind of a, not necessarily on the scale of a Danny Woodhead or a Duke Johnson kind of a player, but Gio has always kind of been there in that 3rd to 4th range from a PPR running back perspective over the last couple of years. Mixon comes in, can do it all. Obviously, there's a dip, but there's much less of a dip than, say, the Fournette to Yeldon situation. So I think Gio is someone you can grab off waivers and start next week.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I mean, the opportunity is there. He's Bernard was the actual starter there a few years ago. And so, he hasn't, become all of a sudden crappy. He is solid. They've just had better talent there. They've had younger guys that they wanted to get involved. So I definitely agree with you with Bernard. I am going to rail on this again. Pick up Austin Eckler, people. This is not a, hey, look, he's getting a little bit here and there. They were up by so much, we'll just give him a little bit. He is being scripted into the game plan. Let me pull up the stats for him one more time. Here we go. Austin Eckler. Game 1. Let's see. He's got, just in his rush attempts, 16 rushes for 116 yards. 5 for 39 in game 1, 11 for 77 in game 2. Plus, he's catching the crap out of the ball. Let me see if I can, let's pull up his receiving stats. In 2 games so far, 8 receptions for 108 yards and a touchdown. So I think he's actually running the ball. He's more yards per carry on his runs than he does on his catches. But he is being scripted into the game plan. This is very much the same way that the Chargers scripted their offense when it was Danny Woodhead and Ryan Matthews. So Eckler has a role here. He is going to continually be flex worthy. If you're in a larger league, he can be a running back too. If you're in a 14, 15, or 14 to 16, 20 team league, he needs to be in your starting lineup. So,
one of the things that I'll add this week is he's going up against the Rams. So we all know that the Rams are the number 1 defense in the league. Where the Rams are strongest is on the perimeter with Talib and Peters at the corners, and then right up the gut in the running game with Sue and Donald up the middle. One of the things that you saw from Jalen Richard in week 1 when the Raiders played was a lot of the dink and dunk in the pass game. Jalen Richard had like 10 targets, 8 catches, was involved, was the number 1 fantasy guy from the Raiders that game. So that's a lot like how I believe Eckler is going to be used. There's going to be a tremendous rush. There's going to be an easy dump off, and Eckler can do something with the ball when he has it in his hands after catching the ball. So I agree with you. Eckler was one of my guys to grab this week. We talked about him last week. He should be owned. I'm hoping that he's owned in more than 50% of leagues so that we don't have to talk about him next week.
Okay, good. All right. Do you have any more running backs that you want to talk about?
We talked about him in a little bit of the news and notes. Aaron Jones currently owned in 45.6% of leagues. His suspension's done, and he can compete and possibly win the starting job as soon as this week. It's a rare find to find someone on waivers that is a starter, and Jones had 2 games last season of 140 yards on the ground last year for the Packers. Jamal Williams has been less than impressive, and if Jones can prove himself in practice and become the starter, there's a relatively easy road after this week against Washington. If you can be patient and you don't need an immediate starter, I would give Jones a serious look. If you need an immediate starter, I would go Eckler and Bernard. If you can wait and you want solid running back bench depth, I would grab Aaron Jones because the upside, I think, is much better than the other 2 because he would be a starter. Table that a little bit with Eckler. I think Eckler's still a solid play regardless in a flex position, especially if you have a 2-flex league. But that's my thoughts with Aaron Jones.
All right. Perfect. Yeah, I'm with you there. He should have been owned already. The only reason I didn't mention him is in Yahoo leagues, he's owned over 50%, it's like 52, 53%. So agree with you there. All right, moving on.
Moving on for me to the wide receivers. Number 1, and this is the top waiver wire ad for me out of all of these people outside of Fitzpatrick. But once again, 1 quarterback league. This is the guy I would target first and foremost. That's Keelan Cole. Currently owned in 48.4% of ESPN leagues. I didn't check Yahoo. Yahoo could be higher. But if you haven't watched the catch from Sunday, you need to stop what you're doing right now. Stop listening. I'll give you permission to stop listening to the podcast, but you need to go watch that catch.
Seriously.
Cole channels his inner Odell Beckham Jr. with his 1-point catch. I like his catch a little bit more than Odell's. Odell just kind of like reaches way back and like arches his back. But to me, Cole like has to flip his body back the other way, high point it, and then turn back and then keep running. And he kept going. So I like this catch. High points it. We said at the beginning of the year that Keelan Cole was going to be the number 1 receiver in this offense, and he proved it Sunday against the Patriots. Now, if Fournette returns this next week from his hamstring injury, the Jags will go back to being a run-first offense. But anytime you can grab a number 1 wide receiver off the waiver wires, you need to do it. So Keelan Cole, the value's there. The upside is tremendous. He's the number 1. You need to go get him if you need a receiver.
All right, so he's one of the guys I was definitely looking at. A quick mention, if he's not picked up already, Deshaun Jackson. He's owned right at 50% of leagues on Yahoo. So just throw that out there. Own him. To go along with Djax, Chris Godwin. I drafted Chris Godwin, dropped him because I kind of needed to. I am planning on picking him back up this week. While it's not a huge stat line, 8 catches for 97 yards, but 2 TDs. He has a TD in each game. This is a high-powered offense that they are not running the ball because they don't need to. Peyton Barber can't run the ball anyways. They have really no running whatsoever. And so Godwin, even in the slot, as their 3rd wide receiver, is getting targeted. In the first game, he had 3 catches. I want to say he had 3 catches in the first half, including a touchdown. And then they backed off and stopped throwing because they were up 48-20 at the half.
Yep.
And so just kept running at the ball the second half. So Godwin is going to be a factor this year. He is, in my opinion, he's a start in larger leagues, a flex start in larger leagues, 14 and up. In 12, he's a good bench stash. Bye-week starter if you need it or if you have an injury that you're dealing with. He is owned in 35% of Yahoo leagues. But if Djax goes down, he is easily going to fill in that spot. He's already shown that he's got some rapport with Fitzpatrick. And so, in my opinion, he is a great guy to pick up that will be productive for your team, especially in injury or bye-week situations.
Yeah, on ESPN, he's owned in 61.1% of leagues.
It's amazing the difference between ESPN and Yahoo.
It is, and that's why I didn't really talk about him. He is available in one of my leagues. He's a guy that I'm going to target. I like Cole a little bit better than Deshaun Jackson personally because he's the go-to. Deshaun Jackson, this whole thing could taper off with the Bucs. And Deshaun Jackson can come back, everything can come back down to earth. Once again, as a risk-averse person, I like the consistency that I think you'll get from Cole rather than the high splash you're getting from Deshaun Jackson. If I'm a Deshaun Jackson owner, I might look at moving him while he still holds his top 5, top 10 value currently.
Okay. With 9 for 275 and 3 touchdowns in 2 games. I'd say that's a touch unsustainable.
Yeah, that's especially. I mean, he's still fast, but it's unsustainable for him. I have one more. I really like Mike Williams, currently owned at 35.3% of leagues. Game script really worked against him this week, even though he did get a touchdown, 2 catches. The Chargers got on top of the Bills early, and then they really just coasted the rest of the way. They really struggled in the third quarter, but to me they weren't really trying. I think they got like 4 yards in the third quarter. Keenan Allen owners were also frustrated in that game.
Yes, we were.
He's going to have a tough matchup this next week against Peters or Talib because he lines up on the outside. But much like the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm buying on the Chargers right now. Mike Williams is a big body in the red zone. There's currently no real tight end presence. That is not a cheap shot at Gates, but Gates doesn't have the speed to continue to work inside the 20s, like 20 to 20. And I don't see him really being that much of a target to get separation or to really do a jump ball in the end zone. So I still like Williams to be the go-to red zone threat for this team. And Keenan Allen owners shouldn't be too freaked out either. Keenan Allen led red zone targets last year from all receivers. So those two will really be the guys in the red zone. I like Mike Williams.
All right, yeah, Mike Williams is owned in 60% of Yahoo leagues, so that was why I kind of moved off of him. The last name that I'll just throw out quickly is Geronimo Allison. Through 2 games, 11 catches, 133 yards and a TD. He's averaging about 60 yards. What he had 69 and 64 in his 2 games so far, and a touchdown in week 1. He is being used by Aaron Rodgers. He is being targeted. If either Devontae Adams or Cobb goes down, he moves into a more prominent role.
Yeah, he was kind of my honorable mention, if you will. He would have been the guy that I just would have made a quick statement, but I'm glad that you did.
Okay. All right, so there's our wide receivers. Let's go ahead and hit up the tight ends.
So tight ends, in no particular order. Actually, I'll do an order. Number 1, O.J. Howard. Currently owned in 21.5% of ESPN leagues. The big man Howard has tremendous big play capability, and he put it on display this week. Once again, we kind of joked yesterday that as soon as the Bucs hit the 25-yard line, they decided to score a 75-yard touchdown. Fitzpatrick's at the helm, and even if the Bucs decide to do something stupid and put Winston back in as a starter in week 4, Howard maintains his position with huge value. His ability after the catch is top-notch, and if Howard were to get the types of target share that top tight ends are getting, you'd get kind of a top 3 to 5 tight end out of Howard, but he's just not getting the target share because they're wanting to target Evans, Godwin, and Jackson. There's other weapons there that prevent him from being a more heavily targeted person. And don't forget Cameron Brate. I know he hasn't really been targeted, but he's still there. I'm not grabbing Brate. And we've talked about Brate a lot, so it's kind of a shame personally on the show that we don't get to talk about him anymore. But the upside's huge, and the downside is small because of the playmaking ability after the catch. If he could have 1 catch for 80 yards, he's almost like the Tyreek of tight ends, if you will. Just not as fast.
Yeah. The thing about Cameron Brate is Cameron Brate was the favorite target of Jameis Winston.
Yes.
Which I'm amazed that Cameron Brate it doesn't have that great connection with Ryan Fitzpatrick, considering they're both Harvard boys.
I don't know. I think college allegiances go out the window when you sign for that check.
Yeah, so I agree with you there on OJ Howard. He's owned in almost 70% of Yahoo leagues. So the fact that he's that unowned in ESPN, I actually own him in ESPN and owned you this week because
I was hoping that we could get through the show without you mentioning that, but that was high hopes, I guess.
Had to throw that in. All right, the guy that I'm looking at, and Justin will agree with me. 31% in Yahoo leagues. How much is he owned in ESPN?
Are we talking about the Disley?
Yep.
24.3.
All right. So Will Disley, again, only 3 catches, but he's been targeted 5 times in 2 games in a row. Got into the end zone again. Right now, he is the big end zone target. Him and Brandon Marshall are the big red zone targets. I think Will Disley is showing his ability to get loose. Catching, his run after the catch, was it 30-yard gain or whatever that he had in the game. Bowling guys over, holding onto the ball. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Will Disley. They may need to start sculpting a little bit of the offense towards him.
Yeah, and it's the point I was going to make if I was going to lead on this was that week 1, once again, another long run where he bowled over people in Denver, and had it not been for a slight overthrow by Wilson, I mentioned this last week, he would have had 2 touchdowns. This week, he underthrows him in the first half, could have also been a touchdown. So had it not been for those 2 misses from Wilson, you're looking at a potential, obviously, the what-if game can get redundant, but you're looking at a tight end who could have 4 touchdowns and be the number 1 tight end in the league right now with just a little bit more of touch on the ball. And so, once again, Seahawks use tight ends. This was not just a Jimmy Graham play when Jimmy Graham was here. They use their tight ends. They use them well. And right now with Baldwin out, I don't really see a whole lot of other options outside of Lockett. Well, I am not even a buyer on Marshall personally.
Brandon Marshall, again, it's possession receiving. He's not going to get a whole lot of separation. So it's jump balls like it was with Jimmy Graham in the red zone.
Or third downs.
Or third downs. Yeah, that's about it from Brandon Marshall that I'm seeing. So do you have any more tight ends that you're looking at?
That really rounds it out. I'm not looking at, once again, we could stream tight ends. These are really the 2 that stick out to me the most. When we get into bye weeks, there's a little bit more at play because guys are sitting. You need to pick someone up, and it gets a little bit deeper. But right now, those are the 2 that really stand out. And I said O.J. Howard gets the lead. I may flip that to Disley now because he's the number 1 tight end. Howard still is the number 1 tight end, but all of those other targets there getting touchdowns, Godwin, Jackson, Evans, all getting touchdowns. Disley's really the only one who scored consistently from Seattle.
Yeah. One name I'll throw out real quick. I picked him up this year, and yes, he scored a whopping goose egg this week. Jonnu Smith. Now, the reason I throw this name out, he's only 20% owned. He's a streaming option. The thing about Smith that I want to put out there is the fact that he is the Delaney Walker replacement. That he's an absolute freak of an athlete. However, he didn't have Marcus Mariota in there throwing to him, who loves throwing the short pass to the tight ends. He had Blaine Gabbert. Because Blaine Gabbert was the quarterback, they were hardly passing the ball anyways. The whole game script was set up to just hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. So, Jonnu Smith is not going to get picked up most likely on waivers. He's the guy that if you want to wait and see and make sure that Mariota's coming back and you need a tight end and everyone else is picked up, you didn't get the waiver picks that you wanted and he's still out there, then he is the guy that I would be willing to look at as a possibility, again, only if Mariota is starting on Sunday.
Yeah. I would be wary. Jacksonville and Philadelphia the next 2 weeks. Once buys start coming into play, yeah, it's an option if you can't get something else, but only if Mariota's playing.
Yeah, again, it's 2 conditions. Mariota has to be starting, and you didn't get your other waiver wire picks. So,
your last resort.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
That's all I've got. Again, we want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us and some of our pontification every once in a while. We really appreciate the fact that you have trusted us with some fantasy football advice. Again, we are the Skull King Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Ryan Skullrood. Go ahead and sign off, Justin.
Have a good one, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, wherever you hear us. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Skull King Nation, thank you for listening to the Skull King Football Podcast. Did you like this episode? If so, be sure to go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube to subscribe. Also, please leave us a rating and reviews to let us know how we can better help you rule your leagues.